Hi everyone, Chilled Unskilled here. If you haven't already guessed by the name, I am a casual gamer. I do spend a lot of time playing games, so I'm casual in the sense that I like to rotate between a variety of different games and genres throughout the course of a year. Path of Exile 2 has really caught my interest though. I'm having a lot of fun with the game. And a good friend of mine had a look at the monk. I was playing in party play with him, and he saw how the monk was performing, and he asked if I wouldn't mind just getting something together for him so that he could have a look at the build overall, what my gear looks like, how I've set up the passive tree, and the gems in particular. So this will be my first video that I've ever recorded to post onto YouTube, so please bear with me. There will likely be a few hiccups, and I just ask that you be a little patient and treat me kindly, if you don't mind. I'll start just going through character sheet very briefly. So you'll see I'm currently level 87. I did make the switch over to Chaos Inoculation as of today, actually. So I was previously running a Hybrid Life ES setup. I'm mostly good on res. Cold is a little bit low, and I wouldn't mind seeing these up slightly higher, overcapped slightly higher, so that when I do run penetration modifiers on maps, it doesn't hurt quite as much, and that would be really, really nice. But overall, stats 174 dex, 140 int. The int is pretty important. You need that for some of the skills and also for some of the gear, so that's really helpful. Starting with gear, we'll go through weapon first. So this is the weapon I'm currently using. I'm pretty happy with this overall. The base crit increase is really nice to have there. It's not a terrible roll on the increased fizz damage, and then it has 2 flat cold and lightning roll on there, which is really nice, along with the crit damage bonus. I am running this with increased elemental damage with attacks socketed. I've actually found that this turns out to be more damage somehow than running it with another set of fizz jewels in there, so getting the extra 40% fizz damage on it. This was the old weapon I was using, so this one is much higher physical sheet DPS than the first weapon I just showed, but I feel overall like the build does better with this weapon, which is why I'm currently using this as the main. So onto the gear, 2 pieces that I picked up today that basically helped me move over to ES and CI completely is the helmet, so this here. Unfortunately, 2 dead stats, really. Accuracy and increased light radius don't do anything for me. I'd much rather have a second res on here. And then accuracy for anything else, really. I mean, I don't need the accuracy at this point. The rarity, always nice to have, so won't complain about that. My amulet is an ES amulet, so decent flat ES roll and percent ES energy, percent max ES on there, which is nice. Also rarity, and mana. The mana is actually pretty helpful, believe it or not. So obviously the higher the pool of mana that you have, the more mana per second you generate without having to change your mana per second regeneration rate at all. So that does help a bit. And then a decently high lightning res roll there, which I needed. So pretty happy with this overall. Could probably use an upgrade at some point, but it's good enough for now. Chest. This is a nice chest piece. Again, 2 stats on here that I don't need at all. The life regen and the reduced bleed duration. Much rather see something on there to do with resistances if I could. And then also, if I could, slightly higher int roll so that I could square out some of the intelligence nodes on my passive for dex again. Rings. First ring, reach ring. This is, it's not terrible, I guess. It's got the 7 to 15 fizz damage, which is useful. The 5 to 6 doesn't really do a whole lot for me. So I would much rather see that as a lightning roll, for example, lightning damage to attacks. Cold damage increase is really nice. Rarity, again, really nice. And then the mana regen, which is so low at this point that it may as well not be there. I'd much rather see a second resist if I could get it. The other ring has got a really nice flat fizz roll on it. Also a better increased cold damage roll. The cost speed does nothing for this build, so that's pretty much a dead stat, at least for the monk. And then the accuracy rating I don't actually need, so I've taken the ring off before and checked, and I still have 100% hit chance with Eye Strike. So that is, in theory, also a dead stat. I could do with another say increased lightning or cold flat damage roll. That'll be useful. Gloves, very similar position. I mean, these are hybrid gloves. Decently high percent increase on this, which is nice, and 2 nice reses, which is also really helpful. The dex is also not that bad, believe it or not. That's helped a bit, given that I've had to spec some int on the passive tree. And then max life, which is ultimately a dead stat here, and the fire damage to attacks also dead stat. I would much rather see a fizz damage on there, or a lightning or cold damage, than fire. Belt is a stat stick, pretty much. I really would like a belt with 3 res. It'll help free up another affix on one of my other pieces of gear for something else. And then my boots, movement speed being the most important. The life on here, dead stat. The mana, super low roll. The int is nice. And then the reduced shock duration, again, not something that I feel like I need. So these definitely do need an upgrade, but getting 30% increased move speed boots is not that easy these days. And then for charms, I'm using this currently, just really for shits and giggles. You can run whatever you like in here. So if you're struggling with freeze, run a freeze charm. It'll help a lot. So I'll start with skill gems next. Like I mentioned, this is an Ice Strike build. So obviously Ice Strike is the bread and butter for everything that I do here. I have qualityed this for the more attack speed, which is really, really nice, but this is currently only level 18, though I have 5 socketed it, which is quite a nice quality of life improvement that I got, or managed to get yesterday. My first perfect Jewelers dropped, so that was really nice. I'm running this currently with Martial Tempo for the attack speed. Conk Effect, because pretty much the area of effect on this matters nothing at all, so I'd rather have the 40% increased damage. Primal Armament, 25% more weapon elemental. Ice Bite, this procs a lot, so because you're freezing stuff so reliably with Ice Strike and then killing it. This 35% increased damage is cold damage. You'll tend to see up a lot of the time you're in maps, especially if they've got relatively good density. And then Inspiration, which was the quality of life addition I had yesterday when I got the perfect Jewelers. This pretty much solved my mana problems that I was having. The manas, it wasn't a severe problem in the sense that I could run most maps without running short of mana all of the time. I mean, I'd have to pop a flask every now and then, but this became particularly problematic in breaches, and as soon as I started getting into the higher tier maps with, like, you know, +% increased rares or magic or pack size, things like that, where you're spamming Ice Strike all the time, I was starting to have mana issues pretty reliably. So Slotting Inspiration has pretty much solved all of that for me, which is really, really nice. This is a dual Herald setup, so I am using Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice. Herald of Thunder at the moment is level 17. I'm rocking this with Cold Infusion, Ambush, so that things that I hit further away from me, so bearing in mind that your charge staff has a projectile attached to it, anything that's outside of that range, you just get a way higher crit chance against, which helps propagate the Herald of Ice explosions. Long shot, similar concept there, just ensuring that things that get hit by this from far away take more damage and more reliably trigger the Herald of Ice explosion. Glaciation for freeze buildup. The Cold Infusion here is quite important, so this lets you this lets the 2 heralds essentially interact, right? So you run Cold Infusion on Herald of Thunder, and you run Lightning Infusion on Herald of Ice. Tempest Bell, this is the multi-hit mini nuke that the monk gets, or anyone playing Quarterstaff gets. You can quality of this if you'd like. The additional 6 hits is pretty nice to have, though I have a good enough attack speed at the moment that I can get through the entire Bell health pool without using that. I'm running this with Overabundance. This is really nice, even though it reduces the skill effect duration. This basically means that you start building combo for the next Tempest Bell while you still have 1 out. So this is really, really nice for keeping uptime on bosses or big juicy rare mobs with high health pools. I'm using Heavy Swing here for the increased damage. The reduction in attack speed does nothing really because we're not attacking with Tempest Bell. Execute for just really boosting the speed at which I kill things once they hit low life. Heft, again, more damage overall. Also running Grim Feast, because really who isn't at this point, it seems like. This is really nice quality of life for survivability while mapping. I don't think or don't value this really as highly as something like Elemental Invocation, but it's just nice having that extra buffer for energy shield while you're running through maps. I mean, I'm not playing hardcore or anything, so dying, outside of losing some experience and all the drops I had in the map, dying is pretty much irrelevant. Herald of Ice. This is the meat and potatoes, really. So this is where all the juicy explosions happen. This I did quality. The quality here is pretty important. It actually increases the explosion radius, which makes a pretty big difference. If you couple that then with magnified effect, it just means it's much more reliably going to propagate between packs of monsters, which is really, really nice. I'm running Lightning Infusion here, which I mentioned before. I'm using Innovate, again, just to boost lightning damage when I kill a shocked enemy, and then Conduction to make sure that when this does pop, it does have a good chance to shock enemies as well. So all these things combined, I found, at the moment at least, is the best combination. I'm running Ghost Dance. This is pure survivability. This has been really, really nice to have, even when I was still running a hybrid life ES setup. I'm using Fast Forward here for reducing the time between gaining shards, and then I'm running Clarity for the mana regen, which I did need. Wind Dancer is also a really nice defensive layer. Oh, I mean, it stacks evasion, basically. You get a ton of evasion more when you hit max stages. I'm using Unbreakable here, rather, just to increase my stun threshold while I'm using the skill. Pin and Lockdown, these two really are, again, more quality of life than anything. It just means when something does trigger this and it gets knocked backwards, they also get pinned, which gives you a tiny bit of breathing room and also creates hopefully enough room for you to dodge roll through if you want to get out of there. Combat Frenzy, mandatory for this build. You need some way of generating power charges. And so Combat Frenzy coupled with Resonance on the passive skill tree, which allows you to convert Frenzy into power charges, is basically where you get all your power charges from. This triggers very reliably because you freeze you freeze stuff all the time, basically, with Ice Strike. So I'm running this with Profusion just to have a chance at getting an additional charge whenever this does trigger. And then finally, Charged Staff. It adds a pretty chunky amount of lightning damage to your quarterstaff attacks, but it also adds a projectile while it's active. That's absolutely not something to scoff at. This can actually trigger stuff that's further away from you than what you're currently able to hit pretty reliably. So it's something that you need to keep 100% uptime on, which should absolutely be doable. I'm only currently running this with 3 power charges, so if you wanted to, you could spec into nodes on the tree that add 1 or the +2, which just increases the duration that this lives for, and it also obviously increases the added lightning attack damage. I don't find it necessary, so I'm not using those nodes. I'm running this with Persistence for quality of life to make sure that this stays up through mapping. I'm using Cold Exposure just to bump the damage that enemies take once they've been struck with this. And then Culling Strike, which I'm not really sure how much value this adds, but it's pretty nice to know that you're killing stuff with a certain % life left on them, and you basically avoid having to run through the rest of that health pool altogether. So that's what I'm running for skills. On to passives. I'll go through the ascendancies first. So first things I picked up was I Am the Blizzard. This is just a decent amount of cold damage, and if you do have a low level pulse account like this, you can actually start triggering those pops pretty nice at an early level. Next thing I picked up was Lead Me Through Grace. This is really for the spirit, so it's nice to have this. You don't need to run spirit on amulets or chests or anything like that. As you get your evasion and your energy shield levels up, you get more and more spirit, meaning you can run more and more of the buffs. Last thing I picked up was Sunder My Enemies. This is really nice when you convert over to crit, which I've done, I think, at around level 75 or 76. It's useful before then, but the benefit you get from it isn't really all that great. I think if you haven't converted over into a crit build before then, it's probably worth picking up something like I Am Thunder, or even getting Unbound Avatar. It's a huge damage buff. As soon as I hit crit, I went here, and my last ascendancies will go into Meditate, just for the survivability. So keynote I mentioned already for this is Resonance. You absolutely need this if you're running this build. This is just a nice way of reliably generating power charges to keep your quarterstaff charge staff up. And then obviously Chaos Inoculation, which I've just recently spec'd into. This is really, really nice. Before I went crit, so basically all the crit nodes are, so this wheel over here, this wheel over here, these two wheels over here, and then this wheel over here, and this one here. Before I had those, I had spec'd basically down into things like this flat increased attack damage, and then also into nodes like the Bestial Skin, these two nodes over here, and then a couple of others throughout the wheels over here that just increase like penetration with lightning or cold, things like that. So as soon as I'd picked up enough crit to convert over to crit reliably, I inspect all of those things and basically dumped everything back into the crit nodes. All right, I will run one very quick map. I think I've got a breach over here, so we'll run a tier 11 because that's, I haven't got that unlocked. We'll run a tier 11 just because that's what I currently have in my inventory. Let you guys get a sense of what the build looks like. I hope you enjoyed, and take care. Cheers.
Frozen Lash!